got gopher problems? Here is how I use the Victor Easy Set trap to catch gophers. Gophers are a problem that unfortunately a lot of us gardeners have to deal with. I know I have tried every trick in the book to repel these things, from putting cat poop down the hole to repellent pellets. I have found that the most effective method is the Victor Easy Set trap. Unfortunately, it does kill them. So bear that in mind. It's just one of those things. It's sort of a choice you have to make as a gardener. But I have found this is the most effective way to keep their population down and keep them out of my garden. So in my yard, they've caused a lot of damage, from ruining plants to ruining entire areas with their mounds. And I've planted a lot of plants that either they don't like or they're poisonous. And even if they're plants that they don't eat, they have killed those plants by creating little tunnels in their root systems. They've even caused a lot of erosion on the side of my house that has a little bit of a hillside, which has meant a lot of damage. One thing I've learned in my gopher research is they are a little bit antisocial. If you find a gopher tunnel, there's usually only one, maybe two gophers, unless it's springtime. There's usually a lot more gopher activity in the spring, mating season, so there might be holes with a lot of gopher families in it, but unlike other animals like rabbit colonies, their colonies are pretty small. They will, however, take over old holes. So sometimes if you've dealt with a gopher problem in one area of your garden and it'll be quiet for a few months and then you might see activity there again, it's usually another gopher taking advantage of the holes that have already been created. So bear that in mind. It's going to be an ongoing process and you just have to keep on top of it. We have pocket gophers all over our yard, and here's a telltale sign of a gopher hole. Here's the main hole. Those lumps of soil, those are the pockets that the pocket gophers create, and they can wreak absolute havoc on a garden like this. And so this is my method for using the Victor Easy Set traps to catch your gophers. I should note this trap does kill the gophers if used correctly. It hopefully should kill them quickly and with as little pain as possible, but they are not a no-kill trap. So bear that in mind. If done correctly, you will have a dead gopher afterwards. So for me, there's a few tools that you'll need in addition to the Victor gopher traps. I always use some garden wire to attach to the back of the trap, and that is a way to allow you to pull the trap out once it has captured the gopher. Sometimes they will pull these further into the hole, so it's always good to have some garden wire to help you get it afterwards. A nice narrow spade such as this one, gloves, and I use this. This is actually a weed remover, but I find this invaluable when dealing with gophers. So the first step is to find a hole. So these are all areas where the gopher has pushed soil out. The ideal hole is one like this, where they actually come out of the ground. And you can use this to find where the gopher tunnel then moves to, but the ideal situation is to find a hole such as this and find out where that hole goes, which direction it goes. So I can actually feel that this hole, there's probably a whole network in here, and this goes kind of in this direction. So I know that's the best place to set my trap, down in there. Here's another good example in my yard of a gopher hole. This one actually goes in both directions, and this is an ideal situation to set two traps, one going there and one going there. Another trick is to make sure you've found an active hole. So this is another gopher hole that we've had for a while, but there has been, so even though the plants have been killed, there's not a lot of gopher activity here. One way you know is that this, which was obviously one of its pockets, the soil is very dry. If it's kind of moist soil that looks fresh, you know it's an active hole. Here's another good example. We've got some dry soil here, but this is quite moist, so I know that's fairly active, and I can use my tool to see where that goes. And from there, I can usually find the opening. So there's another perfect opening there. That's a great place to set your trap. Even if you're not lucky enough to find a hole, for the gopher hole, but you know there's gopher damage. Here's some gopher damage here. You see a lot of soil has been moved around. There's some evidence of a hole here. You can use this tool to dig around, and did you see that? Did you see how quickly and easily that just went in? There's a gopher hole there, and I can actually feel where that gopher hole is. So I'm going to use that to dig out a hole to put the trap in. So once again, noting that that is going in that easily, I'm going to use my spade to carve out and find that hole, and sure enough, there it is. So even though that wasn't visible from above, and I can actually feel I can feel this tunnel is going both ways. So this is a perfect example of a time when if you had two traps, one going this way and one going this way, it would be really, really effective. Once I've identified the tunnel, I'm going to use this to make sure that there's enough space to fit this trap in. And I'm going to use a glove, not only, I suppose, for my own safety. I doubt they're going to bite or come near you, but part of it is also you want to make sure they don't smell any human interference in their tunnel. They might close that tunnel up. So I'm going to go in here, and I've already determined that this tunnel goes in that direction. There's not much space for it to go that way, but it goes down here. And I'm going to feel around in here, and this tunnel is pretty narrow. So I'm just going to pull out some of the soil to make sure I have enough room for our trap. And actually what I did earlier before I started recording is this was here, and I just removed that and made a bit more space for me to work with. The next step is to set your trap. So the way these traps are set, it's got this flap here. This is what actually triggers the trap. And I also recommend wearing garden gloves when you're doing this, as these can pinch you. I've been pinched plenty of times. The first thing you're going to do is make sure this is up, and you're going to push the floor down. This opens up these little spikes, which are the thing that grabs onto the gopher once it's triggered the trap. So you push that down, and then you take this flap and you push those two underneath it, and now your trap is set. So what happens is your gopher is going to go through this, walking out of the tunnel, and it pushes this down, triggering the trap, and that spikes the gopher right in its abdomen, and hopefully it's a pretty swift end to your gopher. So once again, this up, push this down, and make sure those little bars are under there. So now that my trap is set, I'm simply going to place this carefully into the hole, and I want to make sure it doesn't get triggered right when I put it in. And this happens a lot, so be prepared. So the fact that I triggered my trap when I put it in here, this hole might need to be widened a bit. So that's where these little spades come in really handy. You don't want the hole to cave in. You just want to make sure it's just wide enough to get your trap through. And I've got a lot more space there now. So try it again. Carefully placing this in the hole. And now you can see you have a lot more space for that to go in. And I want that to go in there fairly deep, which again is why the garden wire is pretty critical. And then I might just place this soil back over it a bit so it's a little bit hidden and disguised, and that's it. I'm going to leave it. Now, one trick I've found is if after 2-3 days that trap is not triggered, these guys aren't using that hole anymore. They're pretty consistent. If that doesn't work, I'll find another hole to put the trap into. So how do you know if your trap has been triggered? So You'll see here is my garden wire. Again, that helps with even remembering where you placed your trap. And I can see the trap in there, and I can see that that has not been triggered yet because the plate is up. If that plate goes down, that means the trap has been triggered and it's likely caught something.
24 hours later.
It is the next day. Let's go check our trap. So it has been about 24 hours. I actually checked this trap this morning, and I could see that our garden wire which was originally pretty long, has been pulled all the way in. So that is pretty much a surefire sign that our trap has caught a gopher. And so now we need to go and try and retrieve it and see if indeed we have a gopher. So again, gloves. Let's see what we've got. Oh yeah, there's definitely something caught on there. And it obviously ran with that wire. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, okay. The trap is in there. We're gonna have to dig it up. We also set 2 traps, so let's check the other one. Let's see if anything happened with this. Okay, that one's still intact, so we'll leave that in there. Okay, so now we're on the search for the missing trap. I'm gonna try and see where this hole goes and see if we can find it. See if it was effective or if it was just a runaway gopher. Oh, there's some earthworms. Okay, it's going in that direction, which is no surprise with that tunnel there. I think I found it. I can feel something in there. Okay, I found it. If you are squeamish, don't watch this next part. But here's our trap. And there is our gopher. It pretty much got it exactly where we wanted to get it. So this happened in less than 24 hours. So to remove the gopher, we're just gonna push that back flat and it will open back up the spikes that got it. And now what do you do with this gopher? I mean, you could throw it in the trash, but what I do with them is I actually put them back into their hole. Let nature take its course, fill the hole back in. And my reasoning for burying the gopher back in is not only do I not really want a dead animal in my garbage, my logic is also that it'll deter other gophers from this hole, that they'll think, what's wrong with this area? Why is there a dead gopher here? And they'll stay away. So far, this is a very effective technique. Once I've caught a gopher, put it back in the hole, and buried it back up again, I don't see much action on this same hole or area for several months. They're pretty much normally solo animals, but if they do discover another network of holes, I'm sure they'll happily reuse them again. So you might see some action again happen in this space, but I think we're probably pretty good here for the next couple of months. And now here's the spot where the gopher hole was found in the first place. Gopher gone, hole gone, job done. I hope this video has been helpful in tackling your gopher issue. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments below.